Hello, I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at the top stories for today. Trump says that it's not going to happen. Trump says he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. The US president signs an executive order on TikTok to pave the way for American ownership. And the Israeli military launches airstrikes on Yemen, killing 8 people. First, this afternoon, US President Donald Trump has said he will not allow Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to annex the West Bank. Trump engaged in talks on Gaza and the wider Middle East conflict with several Arab leaders at the United Nations. The US president said a ceasefire deal was pretty close, but attention has moved to the West Bank. In August, Israel approved the E1 settlement project, a move condemned by the global community. The plan is to cut off the West Bank from East Jerusalem and divide the territory in two, blocking hopes for a Palestinian state. Trump will meet with Netanyahu on Monday and told reporters at the Oval Office that such an annexation will not happen under his watch.
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop now, okay?
The Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas says he is ready to work with President Donald Trump to implement a peace plan between Israel and Palestine and a two-state solution. Speaking through video at the UN General Assembly, he denounced Hamas's October the 7th attack, saying the group will have no place in governing a future Palestine state. Abbas delivered his remarks by video after the US revoked his visa ahead of the 80th UN General Assembly.
We have affirmed, and we will continue to affirm, that the Gaza Strip is an integral part of the state of Palestine, and that we are ready to bear full responsibility for governance and security there. Hamas will not have a role to play in governance. Hamas and other factions will have to hand over their weapons to the Palestinian National Authority.
Following this, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address the United Nations on Friday. The international community has been waiting for his speech as Israel faces mounting global pressure to end the war in Gaza and its occupation of the West Bank. There's also been a growing number of Western nations formally recognizing an independent Palestinian state.
Nearly 2 years after the deadly events of the 7th of October, 2023, the war in Gaza remains one of the most devastating and consequential conflicts of the 21st century, according to many countries. The crisis began when Hamas and allied militants launched a cross-border assault on southern Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and 251 hostages. The unprecedented attack triggered a massive Israeli military response, including airstrikes and a ground operation. Since then, the scale of destruction has been catastrophic. Large swaths of Gaza have been reduced to rubble, hospitals and schools destroyed, and essential infrastructure decimated. Humanitarian agencies warn that the Strip is now on the brink of famine, with food, water, medicine, and electricity in desperately short supply. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed, with the death toll now surpassing 65,400, according to local authorities. Thousands more have been injured, and millions have been displaced, most forced into overcrowded shelters or temporary camps. The human cost of the conflict has reshaped international opinion. Over the past year, a growing number of countries, now more than 150, have officially recognized the state of Palestine, signaling a major diplomatic shift. Governments across Europe, Latin America, Africa, and Asia say the move supports a two-state solution and responds to what many view as collective punishment in Gaza, an accusation that Israel denies. These geopolitical shifts are unfolding as Israel faces mounting criticism at the United Nations and in international courts, with accusations of war crimes and calls for accountability. In this climate, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to address the UN General Assembly. He is expected to defend Israel's military campaign and reject the wave of Palestinian recognitions.
While Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been in New York, Israel struck the Yemeni capital of Sana'a on Thursday, killing at least 8 people and wounding more than 140 others. The attack comes a day after rebels launched a drone attack on southern Israel. Israel then struck the densely populated Al-Raqqa neighborhood, leaving buildings in ruins. Israel said Air Force aircraft and fighter jets hit targets belonging to the Houthi group. US President Donald Trump has criticized Russia's ongoing attacks on Ukraine, reaffirming his claims that Kyiv can reclaim all its lost territory. After meeting President Zelensky at the UN, Trump said Ukraine is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form, with European support. He expressed frustration with Moscow's refusal to stop the fighting and described Russia's military efforts as failing.
I'm very dissatisfied with what Russia's doing and what President Putin is doing. I haven't liked it at all. He's killing people for no reason whatsoever, and they are doing very poorly, considering they have put it all out on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They're bombing the hell out of everything, and they're picking up very little territory, if any. In fact, they're losing some territory.
The US president has signed a $14 billion deal to shift TikTok's US operations into American hands. The deal limits Chinese ownership to less than 20% and imposes US oversight of the app's algorithms and data flows.
President Donald Trump has signed an executive order on Thursday approving the sale of TikTok's US operations to a group of American and global investors. The deal, valued at about $14 billion, ensures the popular app will remain available to its 170 million US users while meeting the requirements of a 2024 law demanding Chinese divestment. Trump has long argued that Chinese ownership of TikTok posed risks to US data security and political influence. The new entity will be mainly US owned, with ByteDance retaining less than a 20% stake. According to the order, TikTok's algorithms and data flows will be strictly monitored, and a mostly American board will oversee operations.
This is going to be American operated all the way, and great respect for President Xi, and I very much appreciate that he approved the deal, because to get it done properly, we really needed the support of China and the approval of China.
The White House values the new entity at $14 billion, far below some estimates of up to $40 billion, and Trump has named possible investors, including tech billionaire Michael Dell and media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Analysts warn that the move could open the door to new kinds of influence. Casey Myers, a public relations professor at Virginia Tech, says the biggest question is whether ownership changes will affect what people see on TikTok.
There's also this question, this larger question, that is really unanswerable at this time, in that if media moguls who have media companies that produce content are part of the deal, does their content then start showing up in people's feeds? And does the feed experience change for the individual user? Now, there are those who are arguing that it will. There's those that say that it won't. And ultimately, time will tell. But that is a real question about not only just the technology behind the app or the technology behind the social media platform, but also that user experience and the content that it shares and how that relates to the shaping of public opinion.
Investors say the final structure is not yet fixed, and the size of individual stakes could still shift as negotiations continue.
Former US FBI Director James Comey has been indicted by a federal grand jury on one account related to his testimony to Congress and one count of obstruction of congressional proceeding. If convicted, he could face up to 5 years in prison. Mr. Comey, who is known as a long-time critic of the US president, is accused of lying to Congress during his September 2020 testimony over whether he authorized the leak of classified information to the media. In a video statement, Comey declared his innocence and said he and his family have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump. President Donald Trump has celebrated the indictment in a post on Truth Social. The UN Security Council will consider a Russian-Chinese proposal to postpone Iran sanctions for 6 months, though diplomats say it is unlikely to pass. All UN sanctions are scheduled to be reimposed on Friday after Britain, France and Germany triggered a 30-day process over Tehran's alleged breach of the 2015 nuclear deal. European powers have offered a delay if Iran grants full access to UN inspectors, addresses its enriched uranium stock and engages in talks with the US. Iran said Tehran is ready for any outcome but hopes sanctions will be avoided. French farmers drove tractors into Versailles on Monday, blocking highways and rallying outside Parliament. They are pushing a bill that would ease environmental rules, including the reauthorization of a pesticide used in sugar beet farming. Environmentalists warn it could harm bees and favor large agricultural business over small farmers. Farmers say amendments from left-wing lawmakers threaten the bill and want it passed as it is. The National Federation of Agriculture Holders Unions argues looser rules are needed to keep French farming competitive. Now, BP's latest energy outlook report says the future of the world's energy use will depend on how quickly we become more efficient. The new report predicts that the use of fossil fuels is expected to shrink as electricity use led by solar and wind could grow and double by 2050. Oil demand is expected to decline overall, especially in transport as more cars go electric. However, it will remain a key part of the energy system for at least the next decade, largely due to continued demand in the petrochemical sector, where plastics keep crude oil in use. Welcome back to A News and thanks for joining me. Now, NATO's highest military body, the Military Committee, is meeting in Riga this week. For 2 days, Latvia's capital will host senior commanders from all 32 NATO countries. The meeting will reflect on the follow-up from the historic NATO summit in The Hague, in particular by addressing the further strengthening of the alliance's collective deterrence and defence. There's a lot on the agenda, especially following recent violations of NATO airspace by Russia. To further discuss this now, I'm now joined by political analyst and former diplomat, Dr. Mili Demirtas. Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Nadia.
My first question is, the meeting gets underway later today. What can we expect from it?
Yes, NATO has such meetings regularly and in a maybe periodical sense. It's the bureaucratic meeting in one sense. The defense, of course, responsible persons, the commanders, defense ministers, they must come together to discuss all the developments regionally and globally. But I think the time period is so sensitive than we maybe are having like 2-3 years ago. Because as you also said, that the situation is so clear for Russia. The military operations, I mean, in their terms, the military operations are continuing in several sense. I mean, first of all, in Ukraine, but now we are also seeing that this vulnerable, I mean, territories for the history, I mean, which are Baltic territories, and also even some North European territories, they are also coming under some strange, I want to call it strange, military maybe tactics or operations of some Russian drones or Russian equipment. In such an atmosphere, I think the NATO maybe commanders, NATO defense responsible persons maybe talk about how can maybe, as you said, the deterrence procedure be developed. We have as Turkey and as the other, of course, countries as the strongest maybe sides of NATO, United States, United Kingdom, and every part maybe also the small maybe quote unquote partners of NATO, which are some of course having problems in these last terms. I mean, Baltic countries, maybe Poland, even it has increasing budget in NATO. I think they will have much more maybe voices in this especially meeting. But what we will see is that maybe Mr. Trump's decision, because as you may remember that he also have some critical attitude towards NATO in his first months. But after this leaders summit, we can say that something can change, maybe positively, in terms of this NATO procedure, and especially in terms of NATO bureaucracy.
You mentioned deterrence, and I just wanted to kind of follow up on that, especially in regards to the recent airspace violations by Russia. Now that the military commanders are coming together, what do you think a military strategy could look like?
In such a maybe technological maybe world, it can have some many aspects, we can say. But everything can change in minutes, maybe in one night, as the maybe aggressive attitude of Israel showed maybe in Middle East. Any country has some maybe possibility or maybe some equipment to show its strengths in different ways. It could be very cheap drones, quote unquote, I will call it again, because many countries, states leaders say that they are maybe they can be defeated, vis-a-vis these cheap drones. Because in an age of this technological, very fast technological developments, we can say that heavy equipments, heavy military tactics can have also not have a meaning in this changing hours or changing nights. So we can say that Russia knows this. In the last maybe Ukrainian attacks, in this last Ukrainian-Russian war, many things changed between Ukraine and Russia. They also increased their tactics, both in their territory. Unfortunately, many civilians, military personnel lost their lives. But Russia also maybe using maybe such tactics more and more in a different way. But NATO, it is much more addicted, we can say, to have some coordinated, in a disciplined way of military tactics. They are maybe planning, they are having some strategic, of course, distribution of roles, but in such an asymmetrical, we can say that. I always call this academically postmodern style of maybe military changing roles. I think NATO can have also have new tactics about these deterrence procedures. We do not know, of course, the details still. After maybe these months, after maybe following terms, in maybe 6 months, in 1 year, we can say that NATO can have this maybe changing attitude in its military or intelligence maybe procedures.
So the Ironclad Article 5, which establishes collective defence, meaning an armed attack against one NATO member is an attack against all members. Do you think Russia is pushing NATO to do something? Are we drawing closer to this being actioned?
It's the biggest question of maybe a question which are all afraid of, which cannot maybe spelled by many diplomats so directly, so openly, because it is maybe the nightmare scenario. Because we have seen already many destructive wars in these last 2-3 years, especially the geography surrounding us. I mean, Turkey, also Azerbaijan. We are witnessing really the most destructive years of our age. Think about this last United Nations General Assembly. Maybe many leaders, I mean, maybe all leaders have always felt this, dangerous scenario, which are maybe can mean real destruction for many sides. I think Russia and also NATO partners do not want to see such a most destructive scenario at the end. But in some part, you're right. Russian history or Russian maybe bureaucratical or political history always using such scenarios towards its enemies. I don't want to call it directly enemies, but opponent sides we can call. But still, Russia wants to use these tactics in many parts of its territory, maybe which is called by near abroad theory, starting from 2007. Please also think about this famous Munich Security Conference, during which Mr. Putin really openly declared that this near abroad is the red line of Russia. And after that date, starting from Georgia and Ukraine, and now I think Baltic countries, we can see slowly in any maybe centimeter, meter, or kilometer of this near abroad, we can see new Russian tactic, as you said, and Russia pushing maybe the sides. I mean, not directly maybe NATO, but the sides who are really neighboring to Russia to have a real defense capability. And many partners and many countries, I think, would like to choose this option, which is much more easier, that is NATO membership. And I think that the NATO and Russia in this new term and new period must have much more diplomacy between each other. Once upon a time, I think maybe 10 years ago, we have a real partnership, a real dialogue and diplomacy channel between NATO and Russia. And in order to really have a measurement against this destructive scenario, we need this diplomacy again.
Definitely, and you mentioned obviously NATO not wanting to obviously action any type of Article 5 or go into, you know, a conflict with Russia. However, because of the recent airspace violations, do you think that we could be embarking on a wider conflict in Europe?
I think Mr. Trump's last sayings also giving some signals. But Mr. Trump's, we must accept that he's always changing some style of, I mean, diplomatic sayings, sometimes the action. One night, of course, he can very be direct, I mean, in Iranian airspace, as we have last seen. But I think about Russian case. Also, Mr. Trump, and maybe the most important ally of United States, I mean, United Kingdom, and also Turkey. I mean, such actors cannot have such direct decision in such a violation. The violations, of course, changing now in our time. The violation can be like Israel done. I mean, Israel's violations can be real destructive, as we all see in many parts of Middle East, also Iran, also many countries. I mean, of course, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, in many countries, we can see these violations. But I think in Russian violation sense, the NATO members, and also Mr. Trump and United Kingdom and other partners will maybe follow the path of development. And I will not again maybe openly declare that it will not lead to this really worst scenario, because this worst scenario will mean real destructive results to all of Europe, first of all, starting from Baltic territories, maybe also Poland, also the eastern flank of maybe NATO partnership. I think it will be not good for, first of all, these territories.
You mentioned Trump there, and he and a number of world leaders were at the UN General Assembly this week, and he mentioned NATO. And I just want to basically dig into that particular conversation and how Russia will see that Trump actually stands alongside NATO.
The situation's changed, I think, with Ukrainian case, as you also maybe followed from these sayings, because the I mean, press is sometimes very direct, like Mr. Trump. I mean, he's also a very direct politician, and so they are also directly asking, directly, of course, answered that yes, I will be standing maybe near maybe Ukraine, near Poland, or near other maybe territories which are really open to Russian aggressive attitudes. But sometimes also Mr. Trump can be much more in favor of diplomacy, as we have last seen in the summer times in Alaska, in other territories, once upon a time in North Korea, maybe very soon in Beijing, or once again maybe in Tehran or North Korea. We do not know. Mr. Trump is changing always towards diplomacy easily, as he always said that he's a tradesman. First of all, but also nowadays a good diplomat, as he's always saying that he's really contributing to solution of many important conflicts in different regions. But he's maybe standing now alongside these partners. I mean, first of all, these Ukrainian, Polish, and the NATO partners, maybe because of some ethical questions. In the United Nations platform, with so many leaders who are standing maybe in front of this peaceful principles, maybe also Mr. Trump used very pragmatic and very positive maybe dialogue with all these press members. But I do not want to say that it will come to a real basis, because it will change in many 2 days meeting with other leaders, and we will see. Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, they are really pragmatic leaders, and for NATO memberships and for NATO bureaucracy, it will mean much more maybe unclear days, because these meetings can happen like will happen in Riga, but it will be again like a bureaucratic meeting. So the unclear days must be followed and must be maybe evaluated much more in a highly experimental and maybe experienced basis.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your insights and for joining me, Dr. Demirtas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nadia. It's a pleasure.
Welcome back. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Turning to Turkey, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has wrapped up his first White House visit in 6 years, meeting US President Donald Trump. They discussed a number of areas relating to defense and trade. Trump also urged Turkey to stop buying oil from Russia, saying it would be the best thing they could do. Here's more on that story.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has concluded talks with US President Donald Trump at the White House, his first visit in 6 years. The leaders discussed defense, energy, trade, and regional security, indicating a potential reset in Turkey-US relations. During the visit, the two countries signed a memorandum of understanding on strategic civil nuclear cooperation. Turkish Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar said the accord would deepen the deep-rooted and multidimensional partnership between Turkey and the United States in nuclear energy. Trump said sanctions on Turkey's defense sector could be lifted soon, depending on the outcome of the talks. The potential sale of US F-35 fighter jets also remains under consideration.
We're going to be discussing the Patriot system, which is the best system. We'll discuss that. We're going to discuss the F-35. We'll be discussing all of the things that you know about and that some of that you mentioned. And I think he'll be successful with buying the things he'd like to buy.
Erdogan described the visit as an opportunity to strengthen ties, highlighting discussions on F-35 and F-16 jets, economic cooperation, and progress on reopening the Halki Theological School, closed since 1971, a long-standing point of interest for Greece and the European Union. Trump praised Erdogan as a very tough man and reaffirmed their personal friendship. He also stressed Turkey's role as a NATO ally and welcomed Ankara's plans to halt Russian oil imports, saying, "I believe he will stop it," signaling alignment on energy policy. The meeting reflected a thaw in Turkey-US relations, with both leaders signaling intentions to pursue closer strategic, defense, and economic cooperation.
Along with that meeting with the US President, Turkish Airlines announced its decision to buy 225 Boeing planes after the talks. The company said 75 Boeing aircraft had already been ordered. US envoy to Turkey, Tom Barak, also confirmed the purchase of Boeing planes, saying the deal is done. Deliveries of these planes are scheduled to between 2029 and 2034, the airline firm said. Alongside US plane maker, Turkey's negotiations are ongoing with Rolls-Royce and GE Aerospace regarding engines, spare engines and engine maintenance services for the planes. At the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev declared the OSCE Minsk Group no longer active. In his address, he said the OSCE Minsk Group, established in 1992 to facilitate a settlement of the conflict, has failed in its mission, adding that instead of enforcing the norms and principles of international law, its co-chairs sought to preserve the status quo and keep the conflict frozen.
Azerbaijan and Armenia initialed the text of peace agreement. The same day, the President of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of Armenia signed the joint declaration. President of the United States, Donald Trump, also signed it as a witness. Moreover, Azerbaijan and Armenia jointly appealed for the closure of the OSCE Minsk Group and related structures as an obsolete mechanism no longer relevant to the peace process. Accordingly, on 1 September, the OSCE adopted a decision to permanently close these structures.
Following his speech, the Azerbaijani president met with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the UN headquarters in New York. They discussed the peace process with Armenia, reconstruction and climate action, with both leaders praising Azerbaijan's progress and regional role. Moving to Baku Initiative Group, who is continuing to support the legitimate struggle of colonized countries across international platforms. The group has been organizing an international conference at the UN in New York. Executive Director Abbas Abbasov told A News about the organization's mission and more.
In terms of our organization mission, I have to say that we have successfully achieved the conveying of the issues on colonialism and neocolonialism to the agendas of such intergovernmental organizations as United Nations, OEC, NAM and others. And secondly, we have already raised awareness of the global community on decolonization matters and consequences of colonialism. As Baku Initiative Group, we covered all political aspects, but also covered all economic issues and negative impacts of colonial policies. During General Assembly, during High Weeks, Baku Initiative Group conducted 3 international events for last 3 years. And I would like to highlight that the role of our organization on contribution to the decolonization process is sufficiently high.
Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan in Moscow on Thursday. They discussed bilateral trade, which hit a record $11 billion this year. The talks focused on energy cooperation, particularly Armenia's nuclear power plant, which provides around 30% of the country's electricity. Putin noted that Russia is working to extend the plant's operational life. The meeting followed the Global Atomic Forum, part of the World Atomic Week, where both leaders participated. Moving to Uzbekistan, where the national cultural pavilions have officially opened in Tashkent, reflecting Uzbekistan's commitment to inter-ethnic harmony, friendship and the preservation of cultural heritage. The opening follows the presidential decree of March 2025, which outlined measures to strengthen national solidarity and ties with compatriots abroad. Al-Sevil Rajapova has more from Tashkent.
22 national cultural pavilions have been inaugurated in Tashkent, each dedicated to the traditions and heritage of different nationalities living in Uzbekistan. The pavilions were launched in honor of the Day of Friendship of Peoples, celebrated annually on July 30th. Each pavilion showcases household items, artworks, musical instruments, and traditional performances that vividly reflect the diversity of cultures. Among the presented ethnicities are Korean, Belarusian, Ukrainian, Greek, German, Dongan, Polish, Jewish, and others.
Over the past 7 to 8 years, people's diplomacy in Uzbekistan has evolved into a distinct and fully fledged institution. Why is it important? Because interaction between countries should not be confined to official channels alone. Ordinary citizens, through what is often called people-to-people diplomacy, play a vital role in complementing intergovernmental relations. In the early stages of our development, we focused on learning from the experiences of other countries. Now, as part of our 5-year strategy, we aim to expand our presence by establishing branches of our centre across Uzbekistan and significantly broadening our outreach.
For reference, out of Uzbekistan's population of about 36.5 million, more than 1.7 million are Tajiks, around 900,000 are Kazakhs, about 800,000 are Kyrgyzstan, and approximately 500,000 are Tatars, along with many other ethnic communities who contribute to the country's cultural mosaic. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Now turning to the ice, where Baku is buzzing with the world-class figure skating at the Junior Grand Prix continues. The competition has already delivered impressive performances and surprises, and on Friday all eyes will be on the victory ceremony. Our reporter Narchek Jahangrili has more.
The 2021 ISU Junior Grand Prix of Figure Skating has entered its second day. Today, the men are performing their free programs on the ice, while the pairs are competing with their short dance routines.
On the second day, the skating pairs dazzled the ice with their electrifying performances. Anna O'Brien and Derek Tong, representing Azerbaijan in pairs, performed to an energetic folk rock song that cheered up the crowd.
We've been working really hard. We've been doing run-throughs, we're doing exercises. I mean, we have great coaches. We have Kristen Igor, choreographer, Caitlin Weaver as well. We've been doing everything that's needed to be done, and we're really glad to debut here.
Yes, we're very happy with how we skated, and it's so special to be able to do it in the country that we represent, and I think the event was organized so well. Once the music starts, I'm not nervous anymore. You know, it's great to hear all the clapping. The crowd here is also great.
We have also spoken with their coach, who said that their goal is to raise interest in figure skating, and so far he believes they are achieving that.
We started in August 2024 with the ISU granting us that amazing opportunity, and the whole Winter Sport Federation was very hard with the head of the federation and with everyone who is in that team, and the whole experience of that, especially my little part of that, was, even though it was very hard, it was still very exciting process.
The short program for women took place on Wednesday. According to the results, Israeli skater Sophia Shifrin placed first, Chinese skater Yihan Wong came second, and South Korean skater Hee-won Ju finished third. Among the athletes representing Azerbaijan, Irina Kalukina achieved the best result, placing sixth. In total, 92 skaters from 38 countries are participating in the tournament. On Friday, the final day, the free dance and women's free program will decide the champions.
Welcome back to A News, and thanks for joining me. Earlier, we mentioned the special meeting between US President Donald Trump and Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, his first visit in roughly 6 years. Trump told reporters after his 2-hour talk with President Erdogan that their meeting was very conclusive on a variety of issues, but offered no further details. Trump also said that he believes Turkey will agree to his request to stop purchasing Russian oil, and that he may lift US sanctions on Ankara so that it can buy advanced American F-35 jets. Here to unpack this meeting with me is President Dragoman Strategies, Onar Erim. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
My first question is, this meeting had huge implications on Turkey and the region. What were the positive outcomes of these talks?
As you know, we only know a few of the details, but it seems like Turkey is extending its supply line of hydrocarbons, which is may not be very significant in numbers, but I think it's very significant for cooperating with the United States as well. Something that the U.S. has been wanting to do for a long time, especially with NATO members and the European countries as Turkey. Also, it seems that we're getting some leadway as to increasing the trade between the bilateral trade between Turkey and USA. That also seems to be a very, very good outcome. As I said, we are not too sure about the details. However, there were more than hints given by both presidents, Erdogan and Trump, in regards to some good developments as far as the situation in Syria is concerned, as far as the atrocities that are going on in Gaza and the rest of the Palestine, and also possibly some new developments in the long overdue problems specifically between Turkey and USA in regards to the sale of F-35s and F-16s and some other military products that are not as fashionable as F-16s or F-35s talk about. So all in all, if you consider all of the problems that have been going on, regionally and bilaterally. It seems that they're not maybe all being resolved very soon, but they're all on a good path to be resolved. And I think the day before, I think it was the U.S. ambassador to Ankara, Mr. Borak, had mentioned that even the CAATSA sanctions against some of the Turkish state-owned companies and their former executives may be lifted as nearly as the end of the year. So, from all the things that we saw with that's open to public, it seems to be a great working relationship for now. As to the results, how big of a result we'll see and when we'll see, that is still some time to come, possibly.
And that working relationship is very different to what that relationship was with the Biden administration. Why do you think that is in particular?
Well, I mean, we could look at it two ways. We could look at it from a perspective where it was the relationship's depth or lack thereof was due to the inability or the lack of attention by Biden himself and the Biden administration. Or we could flip the coin and take a look at this as a great achievement on how Trump does things as a president. So whether it was the inability or the lack of interest on the Biden administration side that made the bilateral relation to a very bad stage, or is it the willingness and the forwardness and the more of an entrepreneurial approach of the Trump that is making now the most of the issues become workable? I guess we could look at it both ways, or it's maybe a combination. It's a bad and an unwilling administration went out, and a rather good and a willing administration is in right now. I guess time will tell. Do not forget, with all the intentions aside, with all these points that they're giving on both sides, we will not know exactly how good of a working relationship this is or this will be until there's results, concrete results.
And Trump's suggestion to President Erdogan to stop purchasing Russian oil, is that something you can see happening? Trump said that there was a lot of other people to buy oil from. Is that true?
Well, I mean, technically there it is, but let's not forget there's two sides. There's two major points about this thing. Number one, Turkey's by far number one import is hydrocarbons, and it is actually causing single-handedly the deficit that Turkey has been suffering. For her economy. But on the other side, if you look at it geopolitically, let's not forget we are neighbors with Russia. U.S. is not. So, despite things that we may actually see or be on the same note with U.S. on certain issues, we must never forget that our relationship with our neighbors shall not be at a point where it's destructing the relationship between. When those that are not directly neighbors, like U.S. to Russia, technically they are, but they're not practically. It's easier said than done to just cut off your relationship with Russia. Don't buy oil from them. Strategically, geopolitically, it's not that easy. And also, the fact of the matter is, again, single-handedly, it's Turkey's number one deficit maker. The need to purchase all of these, import all these hydrocarbons, and at this point, the part of the hydrocarbons that are coming from Russia are probably amongst the best pricing that Turkey can ever get at this point in time. So, for U.S., it's easier said than done. If the roles were changed, I don't think Trump would have been that enthusiastic. If U.S. was getting hurt like this, enthusiastic about not buying from Russia. So that's a two-way street, and the U.S. administration, Trump, could it have some effect in bringing this down trade between Turkey and Russia? It might, but it will just be a small effect, to be honest with you, because there is what Trump would like, how Trump would like for the things to get done, and then there's reality. Reality is they're our neighbors. They're very, well within our reach, and they can offer the best prices for now for the hydrocarbons that Turkey will always so desperately need.
Sure. Definitely. And Mr. Irim, I don't know whether or not there's some background noise where you are, whether or not a television is on. I can just hear some feedback. But my other question to you was, Turkish Airlines has now bought over 200 Boeing planes. Now, what does that mean for the aviation sector and future investment in Turkey?
It's actually nothing more than how Turkish Airlines is becoming. It's been in the top 3 for a long time, but it's becoming the leading airline in the world. This has nothing to do with this visit, but Trump loves, as a businessman, to take credit for things. It's actually a 10-year. It's a result of a 10-year projection of Turkish Airlines, which they started acting upon it about 5 years ago for a purchase of 600 airplanes. Narrow and wide body over the course of next 20 years. Turkish Airlines has already agreed to buy 300 of these from Airbus, and the other half to maintain a balanced fleet, which is always done by airlines. They don't want to buy everything from one maker. So all along the project for the last 3-4 years was to buy these from Boeing. But unfortunately, nothing to do with the Turkish side. Boeing had had some production issues, and this just came around right now. To be able to actually for them to say yes under the Turkish Airlines' requests and demands, and Trump was right there to take the credit for it. But it's an ongoing process for actually quite some time.
I see. Well, Trump has also hinted at potentially lifting sanctions against Turkey. Now, what will that mean for purchases of advanced American F-35 jets and beyond?
In reality, practically nothing, because all it needs is a signature. As a matter of fact, most of the sanctions that are in question were due to, I think, 2 of the Turkish state-owned defense manufacturers and 2 or 3 of the executives that used to run those companies. The sale of F-35 is actually not as much to do as with the sanctions that we're talking about, which actually have affected Turkey for maybe a year or so when it was first introduced, but is actually obsolete right now. But the sale of F-35s has really have to do with some of the bills that were passed in the last 3-4 years, which can be overcome if Trump administration really concentrated on it. We'll see how it happens. But the CAATSA sanctions actually are more lifting them is more of a friendly gesture and nothing more than a gesture at this point than anything else.
I see. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for your insights, Mr. Irim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it. You're all up to date with the world news for the hour. Thank you for joining me and stay tuned to A News.